What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 2 NFL game picks outright versus the spread along with our locks of the week, so make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there, and let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get right into it. And for today's breakdown, we will be using OddsJam in order to make sure we get the best odds on all of these bets. And frankly put, OddsJam, if you aren't familiar with it, has one of the best online databases of information when it comes to line shopping, when it comes to live odds, not only for the NFL, but pretty much for any sport you want. So many options in terms of looking at sports books to guarantee, you have a much higher chance of getting a profitable bet. And look, whether you're a beginner, whether you're an intermediate or an expert bettor, OddsJam has betting tools like their positive EV to show you line discrepancies so you know you're getting the best odds, or arbitrage, where you get equal and opposite bets for a risk-free return. So make sure to capitalize on that and check that out. But with that being said, let's get into our breakdowns and quickly going over the Thursday night game with the Giants versus Washington. We actually predicted that game right on the money line and on the spread. We said it'll likely be a game that's close, back and forth. These two teams know each other pretty well, but Washington, the better team overall. On the spread, we picked the Giants, and they hung in there. Washington obviously needed the last second field goal in order to get it done. So we hit on both those bets. We start out 2-0. Nice way to do that. But moving on to the Sunday games. Let's look at the New Orleans Saints at the Carolina Panthers. Divisional clash. Both these teams 1-0. The Panthers taking care of business versus the Jets. No surprise there, really, especially with how bad the Jets look. Tough to take away anything from that one. The Saints beating the brakes off the Green Bay Packers. I think that was more so to do with just the Packers having an off game than the New Orleans Saints looking amazing, which credit to them, though, they did. But here, it's going to be a different story. It's a divisional clash. These two teams know each other very well, and I think this is going to be a very good litmus test for both of these teams. I think for the Panthers, it's really tough to take away anything from their Week 1 victory. Here, this is a much better defense offensively, even if the Saints don't have as many wide receiver options as some other teams. I think they're still a better offense than the Jets. So for that reason, I have to think that for the Panthers, this is going to be their first actual test. Offensively, yes, the Panthers have more weapons. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall. But the New Orleans Saints, look, I think they have a similar type of quarterback in Sam Darnold to Jameis Winston. Both guys that can air it out, but sometimes have turnover issues. But I will give the edge to Jameis Winston, not only because he has more experience, but also he has the better offensive coach in Sean Payton, which shouldn't be overlooked. The Saints do have Alvin Kamara. After that, it's a little bit tough. They've got a pair of tight ends, which were effective in Week 1. But I think it'll come down to the wide receivers. I think this is where we could see some breakout games from Marquez Callaway, Deontay Harris. That's something to keep an eye out for defensively. I think that any team can look good versus the New York Jets. So, again, tough to put any stock into what the Panthers did. I think the Saints have the slightly better defense. In the secondary, they are hurting right now. But to me, they are the better overall team. And the Panthers are simply, even though some people might say a dark horse candidate to upset the Saints, I don't buy into that. I think that in order for the Panthers to, prove it to me, they need to get a quality win. This would definitely qualify as such, but until that happens, I'm going to go with the New Orleans Saints on the money line outright. On the spread right now, the Saints are at -3.5. I think it'll be a close game, but at the end of the day, to me, the Saints are the better team. I'm going to go with them to cover that spread and pull away as the game progresses. Next up, we've got the Cincinnati Bengals at the Chicago Bears. The Bears 0-1 after losing to the LA Rams in convincing fashion, while the Bengals 1-0 after their overtime thriller versus the Vikings. Now, this is a game that I think will shape up kind of differently for both these teams. The Bears, more importantly, are facing a defense in that of the Bengals, which can't really compare to that of the LA Rams. While the Bengals, well, this could be a tougher defensive matchup for them compared to what we saw versus the Minnesota Vikings. So And this game could get turned around on its head a little bit from what we saw in week 1. But in the same breath, defensively, the Bears, they looked kind of suspect in the secondary, which we pointed out in week 1. And the Bengals definitely have the offense that can take advantage of that with guys like Boyd, guys like Higgins, Chase, Joe Mixon. But again, I'm really interested to see how this Bengals offensive line holds up versus a better front. But I think the takeaway here is that the Bears are going to be facing a defense that can make him look like an average offense. It's usually in those situations where the Bears have their best chance of winning. And I think Andy Dalton here will look like a serviceable quarterback. But more importantly, Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, I think can win the majority of their matchups. And David Montgomery should have a good outing as well. Defensively, even though this isn't the Bears defense that we've come to know, well, I think they're better than what the Bengals have at that position. So I'm going to go with them here to win this game outright. The spread makes me a little bit nervous because the Bears are at -2.5. Look, if you could tease that number, play around with it, and get like the Bengals at +6, +7, then I would do that. It's tough right now. It's kind of a pick 'em because the Bears at -2.5, really close to that -0 number. I'm going to go with the Bears ultimately to win this game outright and on the spread. I think overall they're the better team slightly. I wouldn't be shocked if the Bengals win this game somehow. The way I would bet it overall, again, probably I would tease that spread, play around with it a little bit there, give you a little bit more cushion, and take the Bengals that way. But if it's at the number it's right now, then I'm going to go with Bears across the board. Moving on, we've got the Houston Texans at the Cleveland Browns. And the Texans, to I think a lot of people's surprise, absolutely boat raced the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 1. The Browns, man, they had that victory versus the Kansas City Chiefs, but then just let it slip late in the game. So they're 0-1, the Texans 1-0. But this is a much tougher matchup for the Houston Texans. They're not going to face Urban Meyer, an inept, team like the Jaguars every single week. So with that being said, I think there's a good reason why the Browns are favored at -13. And I got to say, I'm riding with them outright on the money line, at least for sure. I think from top to bottom, they are the better team. I think Tyrod Taylor is going to struggle much more so here versus a good Browns defense compared to what we saw versus the Jaguars. Honestly, I think it's going to be a night and day performance for the Texans. I don't think that this game will be close when it's all said and done. So I'm taking the Browns outright. On the spread is where it's interesting. How confident do you feel with the Browns covering -13? That's a little bit of a high number. I could see the Browns maybe taking their foot off the gas pedal. I might actually take the Texans here on the spread or just tease that number down to like -10, -8, -9, something like that, and go with the Browns there. But to me, that's a little bit of a high number. Even with the Houston Texans having their own fair share of issues, I'm probably going to go with them on the spread. But like I said before, ideally, I'm teasing that number down and then taking the Browns. Afterwards, we've got the LA Rams at the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts 0-1 after losing to Seattle. The Rams 1-0 after beating the Bears. Rams, I think, here are the better team. The stats reflect that. The bets reflect that. Outright, I like the Rams to win. Right now, the Colts, I think they're still in a phase where they're kind of figuring things out offensively, getting comfortable with Carson Wentz leading the show. I don't think they have enough potent wide receivers. There's a reason why they were relying on their running backs in Naheem Hines and Jonathan Taylor so much in week 1. And that could be problematic versus this Rams defense. Honestly, it can be problematic on a week-to-week basis. And I think that Carson Wentz is going to struggle versus this Rams defense. I really do. Defensively, the Colts could potentially be without Darius Leonard. That's a big deal. And I think the Rams offensively could benefit from that. The Colts defensive captain not being there, not being 100%. But even if he was playing, I got to give the edge to the Rams here. Offensively, Matthew Stafford looked amazing. And I said that before. I love what Matthew Stafford has. And I think he's a great quarterback. So I give the edge to the Rams overall here pretty much everywhere. I like them to win this game outright. The spread -3.5. I'm still going to go with the Rams there. I think it'll be close, but ultimately, I think they're the more complete team. -3.5, not that big of a number. Ideally, you're trying to get that spread to under -3, but even with that half point, I'd go with the Rams there, but definitely feel much more comfortable with them on the money line. Then Broncos at the Jaguars. I'm hammering the Broncos here. The Broncos 1-0 after beating the Giants. The Jaguars 0-1 after getting embarrassed by the Houston Texans. And I think this game could honestly be worse for the Jaguars because the Broncos have a legitimate defense. And the Jaguars looked so bad on so many levels last week. But I think it all stems from Urban Meyer, his unwillingness to begin with, utilize James Robinson in the rushing attack properly like it was used last year. I think he's potentially limiting Trevor Lawrence. And defensively, the Jaguars looked awful. Now, I'm not saying the Broncos offensively are world beaters, but I think they could be here versus this Jaguars team. I'm hammering the Broncos on the money line. I hate everything about the Jaguars right now. On the spread, the Broncos are at -5.5. Even with a team that's suspect like the Broncos, I think if there's any week where you take them on the spread, it's this week. I'm taking them on the spread as well. Afterwards, we've got the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. This is a game, obviously divisional clash. Both these teams want, no. Moving on, we've got the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. Divisional clash here. Bills 0-1 after losing to the Steelers. Miami Dolphins 1-0 after beating the Patriots, maybe getting a little bit lucky on a late Damian Harris fumble, but it is what it is. It's a new week, and here I'm looking at the Bills, and I am probably going to be going with them here. On the spread, they're at -3.5. Miami Dolphins will be without Will Fuller in this contest. I do think that does hurt their offense a little bit. They obviously still have options with Jalen Waddle, with Devontae Parker. But I think it comes down to Tua versus Josh Allen. And I just haven't seen enough from Tua as a passer of the football here as I have from Josh Allen. I think the Bills are going to have a bounce-back game pretty much across the board. I expect bigger things from Stephon Diggs, from Josh Allen himself. And the Bills also have a pretty stingy defense themselves. I think that this game could potentially start out lower scoring and then the Bills maybe potentially pull away. But again, crazier things have happened. These two teams know each other well, so I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means. But to me, the Bills are the better overall team. It comes down to the two quarterbacks. I'm not saying that Tua can't be great this season, but I just think the fact that Josh Allen is a more willing passer, and right now, simply put, a better passer with some more dangerous offensive weapons, more options there, gives the edge to the Bills for me. I like them outright. On the spread, they're at -3.5. Again, ideally, I would tease that number down to less than 3, but as things stand right now, I'll still give them the benefit of the doubt and take them on the spread as it stands. Moving on, we've got the Patriots at the Jets, another divisional clash in the AFC. And here, this one's pretty simple. I'm taking the Patriots every which way possible. The Jets looked awful. There's a reason why they're 0-1 in week one. The Patriots, they were one play away, arguably, from being 1-0. Again, an unlucky Damian Harris fumble. I think here, though, they hold the edge in every single possible matchup offensively. Mac Jones looked pretty good, didn't make too many mistakes, and even if he does here, he can get away with it versus this Jets defense. I think that the Patriots are going to have their way with the Jets defense. I think the Patriots defense is going to have its way with the Jets offense. The Jets offense didn't look all that great. The Panthers defense was able to shut them down. I think the Patriots defense is a much better unit. I like the Patriots here outright, no questions about it. On the spread, they're at -5.5. I think that number should be higher. I'm hammering the Patriots on the spread as well. Next up, we've got the Raiders at the Steelers. Both these teams 1-0, maybe a bit surprisingly, but the Raiders getting that overtime thriller versus the Baltimore Ravens. Kudos to them. Then Steelers just, an old-fashioned, hard-nosed battle versus the Bills. Their defense really shining there. Now, this is a game where the Steelers are favored at -6.5, a bit of a high number. But when you look at the Raiders, I think this is going to be a completely different story for them versus when they faced the Ravens. This is a much, much better defense. And the Raiders, I think they can only continue to rely on Darren Waller for so long. Like, he's their option 1, option 2, and option 3. And then they go to guys like Henry Ruggs and Edwards and, Zay Jones, and look at some other options at running back like a Kenyon Drake. And I think that's going to be problematic. I think that's going to catch up to them, and I think you can catch up to them here versus a very good defense. I'm not scared off by the Raiders' defense. On the flip side, I think the Steelers offensively can have success. I look at much better outings from that entire offense, especially somebody like a Najee Harris. So that's what I'm looking forward to here. I think the Steelers are the better team. And to me, the Raiders, bit banged up right now. Josh Jacobs won't play. This is just bad timing for them. I'm taking the Steelers outright. The spread, like I said before, at -6.5, a little bit too high in my opinion, but I'm still going to go with the Steelers. I think from top to bottom, they are the better team. Next up, we've got the San Francisco 49ers at the Philadelphia Eagles. Both these teams 1-0. The Eagles taking care of business versus the Falcons, while the 49ers, they held the lead versus the Lions pretty much from start to finish, but they probably may just sweat it out a little bit, considering at the end of the game, they had a chance to, potentially have to go to overtime, something like that. But at the end of the day, this is a new matchup here. And this is a matchup itself that I actually kind of struggle going one way or the other. I could see the Eagles winning. I could see the 49ers winning. I think it's kind of a coin flip. I don't really know what to expect from the Eagles. I don't know how much what we saw in week 1, which was impressive, is what we should expect throughout the rest of the season. I think the 49ers are a better team. You could argue from top to bottom compared to the Falcons, so this should be a lot more competitive. Offensively, Jalen Hurts looked really good, but I think, offensively, the way the 49ers are built, I have more faith in Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he is the better overall quarterback at this point in time. Offensively, the 49ers, they've got a good rushing system in place, even with Raheem Mostert being hurt again, unfortunately. George Kittle's there, Deebo Samuel. I think Brendan Ayuk will be more involved this week as well. I think they've got a better defense than that of the Atlanta Falcons. So I guess when it's all said and done, I am leaning the way of the 49ers outright at least. But on the spread, I'm going to hedge my bets here. I think this is a game where probably my favorite to hedge my bets on. The 49ers right now on the spread are at -3. I'm taking the Eagles there. I could see this game going either way, and I think the Eagles can keep it close. And especially with what we saw from the 49ers in week 1, how they kind of let that game get away from them, make it a lot closer than it should have been, makes me feel better about taking the Eagles on the spread. Next up, we've got the Minnesota Vikings at the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm hammering the Cardinals here. Now, Arizona is at -3.5 on the spread. I think that spread should be much, much higher. The Vikings, offensively, it took them a little bit to get going in that game versus the Bengals. They had to come from behind. Defensively, they're going to be missing some key pieces this week, which is a problem versus the Cardinals and Kyler Murray, who, let's be honest, he looked sensational. If it was from a week 1 sample size, who's your MVP? I'm looking at Kyler Murray. That's what I was saying all off season, that Kyler Murray is my pick to be MVP this year. He certainly looked the part in week 1 versus the Titans. That's why the Cardinals are 1-0, and I think the Vikings could be staring at an 0-2 start. I just don't see how they can stop Kyler Murray. I think offensively, the Cardinals with DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore, AJ Green, but more importantly, again, Kyler Murray, just are going to be too difficult to stop. And I think defensively, even though this could be a high-scoring game, I got to give the edge to the Arizona Cardinals. I think right now the Vikings are just a little bit too banged up. If you look at their injury report defensively, it's a little bit scary. I'm taking the Cardinals to win this game outright. I think, again, they have the superstar at the quarterback position. That's going to be a problem all year long. And on the spread, -3.5, it's not all that big of a number. I really like the Cardinals to cover that spread as well. Next up, we've got the Atlanta Falcons at the Tampa Bay Bucks. Divisional clash here, and two teams that are trending in opposite directions. The Bucks 1-0 after beating the Cowboys. The Falcons 0-1 after just looking awful versus the Eagles. And even though this is a divisional clash, well, doesn't matter, because I would contend that the Bucks are better, just so much better, in fact, in every facet of the game here. Offensively, they've got the better quarterback, even though I do like Matt Ryan. They've got the better weapons at wide receiver. They've got options at running back. They've got the better offensive line. Defensively, they're better from top to bottom. It's scary. The Falcons, man, even though they've got a potent offense, or at least on paper they should, Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, Kyle Pitts, all of those guys were absolute non-factors week one. And I don't see that changing versus one of the best defenses in the NFL. I don't care if this is a divisional clash. These two teams know each other well. The spread is at minus 12.5 for a reason. The Falcons, if they continue on this trend, they're going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And even though I usually stay away from high spreads in divisional clashes, I think this is one where you make an exception. I think the Bucs can absolutely blow out the Falcons. If that's a little bit too risky for you, then just go with the Bucs outright. That's the safest bet probably of the week. On the spread, like I said, minus 12.5. Maybe tease that down to single digits and then go with the Bucs. But right now, I'll go out and say the Bucs can cover that lofty spread. Moving on, we've got the Tennessee Titans at the Seattle Seahawks. The Titans 0-1 after getting shellacked by the Arizona Cardinals, while the Seahawks 1-0 after taking care of business versus the Colts, and they looked great doing so. And probably for that reason, this game kind of has a high spread, minus 6.5 for the Seattle Seahawks. They are at home. Great home field advantage for them there. And look, even though I try not to put too much stock into what we see week one, the Titans looked a little bit worrisome. Offensively, Julio Jones wasn't involved enough. Derrick Henry was a non-factor. The offensive line looked awful. Ryan Tannehill was hit continuously. The defense, we never really expected them to be all that great, so I'm not putting too much stock into that. And if we just look at this game, offense versus offense, which I think kind of what you have to do, because again, the Seahawks defense, not all that great either. Weapons-wise, I think maybe you call it a wash. A.J. Brown, Julio Jones versus Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Chris Carson versus Derrick Henry. So then you look at Russell Wilson versus Ryan Tannehill, and there, to me, the answer is simple. I'm taking Russell Wilson every single time. I like the Seattle Seahawks outright. I do think the Titans will have a better showing, but definitely what we saw in week one was concerning. The Seahawks at minus 6.5 seems a little bit high. Like I said, I do think the Titans will be better here. We're going to see a better performance from them. So I'm going to tentatively take the Titans here on the spread. I think they come out with a better showing, keep this game a little bit closer, maybe get some garbage time points, and ultimately, lose by less than a touchdown. Next up, we've got the Dallas Cowboys at the LA Chargers. Talk about what could be one of the highest scoring games of the week. Cowboys, just unfortunately 0-1. If that game just goes a couple different ways versus the Bucs, they could very well be 1-0. The Chargers, though, they're 1-0 after a hard-fought victory versus the Washington football team. Maybe benefited from the fact that Ryan Fitzpatrick got hurt, but that's neither here nor there. They are a talented football team. The question is, can they put it, together for a full season? And can they win those close games, which I think they're going to have to do here yet again. Now, the Chargers are favored at minus 3.5. I think right now that's a little bit too lofty for me. I think it'll be a close game. And even though I like the Chargers outright simply because the Cowboys are hurting defensively, and that's after that week one performance where they gave up all those points versus the Bucs. So I think we're going to see a big-time performance from Austin Eckler, from Justin Herbert, from Keenan Allen, from Michael Williams, who looked really good in week one as well. The Chargers defense, I think no question about it, is the better team, squad. But Dak Prescott, he was great versus the Bucs defense. So if he can be great versus that defense, but I mean, considering you have Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Ezekiel Elliott, shouldn't really be all that of a surprise. I do think they're going to miss Michael Gallup a little bit. But like I said before, if Dak Prescott can have success versus the Bucs, I think he can have success versus the Chargers. But right now, I think the Chargers are the healthier team. I think they're the better team defensively, so I'm going to take them outright. On the spread, though, the Chargers usually play these close games. I think the Cowboys will be in it once again. Wouldn't be shocked if it comes down to a field goal. So I will take the Cowboys there since the spread is at minus 3.5. Then Sunday night, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs at the Baltimore Ravens. The Chiefs 1-0 after they come back from behind to beat the Browns, while the Ravens 0-1, losing in overtime versus the Raiders. That was heartbreaking loss, but ultimately that defense kind of just buckled as the game progressed. Now here, I'm looking at the squad, and offensively, I have more faith in the Kansas City Chiefs for sure. Look, I really like Lamar Jackson. Don't get me wrong. I think what he can do with his legs is probably unparalleled, but I look at the pass-catching weapons for the Ravens versus what we have with the Chiefs and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, where the Ravens are kind of using a committee approach. I got to give the edge to the Chiefs here. I think it'll be a high-scoring game, but ultimately give me Patrick Mahomes over Lamar Jackson. Both these defenses have question marks, as we saw in week 1, so I'm trying to focus in on the offense and who I think will have the edge there, and like I said, to me, that's Patrick Mahomes. I'll take the Chiefs outright in what should be, again, another very, very high-scoring game. The Chiefs are at -3.5. Spread isn't all that large, in my opinion. The Baltimore Ravens offensive line with, some question marks at the moment, I think could be an issue. So I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs here to cover that spread. We kind of saw Lamar Jackson running for his life a little bit in week 1. So I think all of those factors could contribute here, but I think offensively, the Chiefs are just the better team. And then finally, Monday Night Football, divisional clash, Detroit Lions at the Green Bay Packers. All these teams 0-1. The Lions, valiant effort from them to come back versus the 49ers, while the Green Bay Packers, they just looked awful versus the New Orleans Saints. But, if you just look at it for the Packers at least, if there's any team that you're going to give the benefit of the doubt to and say that that was a fluke, it'd be them. Happens from time to time. Look at the Bucs last year. I think year prior, like versus the Chargers. So it happens, games where they just come out flat and then just stop playing. But this is a game where I think the Packers are going to absolutely come out hot and just take it all out on the Detroit Lions. We saw how bad that Detroit Lions defense was in week 1. I think it's going to be a situation like that every single week. I think the Packers can honestly put up 40-plus points on the Lions. Now, for what it's worth, I think the Lions can also keep this kind of high scoring, but as the game progresses, I like the Green Bay Packers. I think the better team overall from top to bottom. Both these teams have questions defensively, but even with that, Packers at home here, I'll take their defense over that of the Detroit Lions. I'll take Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones over, Jared Goff and, DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson. So give me the Green Bay Packers here to win. But the spread, -11.5, I think that's a little bit too high. Like I said before, I think the Detroit Lions are going to do a lot of passing here. And Jared Goff is a capable quarterback. The Green Bay Packers defense isn't all that great either. I think there's going to be some garbage time points here, similar to what we saw with the 49ers versus the Detroit Lions. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Lions can cover the spread. So give me Detroit there. But with that being said, let's look at some of our locks of the week. And we begin with the Cleveland Browns versus the Houston Texans. Simply put, give me the Browns here. The Texans aren't going to benefit from playing the Jaguars every single week, so I will take the Browns there. Afterwards, moving on, we've got the Denver Broncos versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Give me the Broncos here. The Jaguars looked absolutely awful. They couldn't get it done versus the Houston Texans. I think they're going to struggle even more so versus a good Broncos defense. Then Patriots at the Jets. Give me the Patriots all day long. The Jets look like one of the worst teams in the NFL. And offensively, defensively, to me, they are outmatched by the New England Patriots. And then finally, give me the Tampa Bay Bucks over the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons, they look problematic offensively, which, is kind of their saving grace. If they struggled versus the Eagles, I think they're going to get absolutely locked down by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bucks have a great matchup here. I'll take Tom Brady all day long. So with that, we wrap up our Week 2 NFL game picks, outright versus the spread, along with our locks of the week. And as always, let us hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. And lastly, again, make sure to check out OddsJam when it comes to all your betting needs to make sure you get those guaranteed profits. Link is in the description. But with that being said, we'll see you guys in future videos.